New boss fired me for skipping work. To nurse my grandma, said old people die anyway. My boss fired me. Then, as I was cleaning out my desk, I saw him shredding documents, invoices that looked awfully familiar. Could my grandmother's death be linked to his greed? What secrets were buried in those files? Hey everyone, you are not going to believe what happened to me. I lost my job, my faith in humanity, and almost my grandmother's legacy all at once. My new boss, a real piece of work, fired me while I was taking care of my dying grandma. He even had the gall to say, and I quote, "Old people die anyway. Can you imagine?" But that wasn't the end of it. His callousness sparked my suspicion, and what I uncovered went way beyond just a bad boss. It was fraud, deceit, and a betrayal that hit me harder than I ever thought possible. Buckle up, because this is a story of heartbreak, resilience, and ultimately, justice. Stick around to the end to see how I turned the tables on the man who thought he could get away with anything. What would you do if your boss fired you while you were caring for a loved one? Let me know in the comments. Everything changed in Birmingham. When he said those words, the air in the hospice was thick with the scent of antiseptic and lilies. I sat beside my grandmother, her hand frail in mine. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was the soundtrack to our days. I'd taken a leave of absence from my job at MedTech Solutions, hoping for a few weeks, maybe a month, to be with her. My new boss, Mr. Harrison, hadn't been thrilled. "She's lived a long life," he'd said during a strained phone call. "We need you here." "Operations can't just stop because someone's elderly," I'd bitten back a retort. "Family comes first," I'd managed, my voice trembling. He sighed, a sound that scraped against my nerves. "Just try to make it back as soon as possible." That as soon as possible never arrived. Grandma's condition worsened rapidly. The doctors told us it was just a matter of time. I stayed by her side, reading aloud from her favorite books, holding her hand, and whispering stories of my childhood. Then came the day Mr. Harrison called with the news. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice devoid of any actual sympathy, "but we've decided to let you go." I was stunned. "You're firing me while I'm—" "We need someone who can be here full-time," he said, his tone flat. "And frankly, your performance hasn't been stellar lately. You've been distracted." I tried to explain, to plead, but he cut me off. "I understand this is difficult, but it's a business decision. And honestly, old people die anyway. It's a fact of life. We can't put the company on hold." Those words, "old people die anyway," hung in the air like a toxic cloud. I hung up numb. How could someone be so callous, so evil? That evening, Grandma slipped away peacefully in her sleep. I was heartbroken, but also furious. Fired while my grandma died, all because a soulless man saw her life as expendable. The office, usually bustling with activity, felt strangely quiet. The flickering fluorescent lights cast long, distorted shadows. Mr. Harrison avoided eye contact as I walked past his office. Good riddance, I thought. As I packed my belongings, I noticed him frantically shredding documents in his office. I couldn't help but wonder what he was hiding. He seemed unusually flustered. Glancing nervously towards the door, I caught a glimpse of the papers he was destroying. Invoices, lots of them, and the name at the top of one caught my eye. Golden Years Supplies. Golden Years Supplies. That was the name of the company that supplied Grandma's hospice. Something felt off. Could it be connected to my firing? Was Mr. Harrison somehow involved? I stuffed my remaining items into a box, a knot of suspicion tightening in my stomach. I knew I couldn't let this go. The rain was coming down hard as I left the office. The Birmingham sky was a heavy, oppressive gray. It felt like the world was mirroring my mood. I had a funeral to plan, a broken heart to mend, and a growing suspicion that my boss was involved in something far more sinister than just a cold-hearted firing. What would you do? Would you just walk away? Or would you fight back? The nurse knew something. The funeral was small and intimate, just close family and a few of Grandma's friends from her book club. Even in my grief, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss at MedTech Solutions. The name Golden Years Supplies kept echoing in my mind. After the service, I sat with Grandma's former nurse, Sarah, a kind woman with gentle eyes and a soothing voice. I started venting, telling her about my firing, Mr. Harrison's callous comment, and my suspicions about Golden Years Supplies. Sarah's face grew pale. Golden Years Supplies, she asked, her voice barely a whisper. That's odd. What do you mean? I asked, leaning forward. We stopped using them months ago, she said. Their supplies were subpar, and their prices were outrageous. The administration switched to a different vendor. My heart pounded. But I saw invoices with their name on them just yesterday at my office. Sarah's eyes widened. That's impossible, unless... She trailed off, her brow furrowed in thought. Unless what? I pressed. Unless someone is still using their name to bill the hospice, she said slowly. But why? The pieces started to fall into place. Fake invoices, a new boss eager to get rid of me, my grandmother's hospice. It all pointed to one thing: fraud. Sarah, do you have any old invoices from Golden Years Supplies? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She hesitated. I keep a few things for my records, but why would you need them? I think my boss is running a scam, I said, my voice tight with anger. And I think my grandmother's hospice is involved. Sarah looked at me, her eyes filled with concern. That's a serious accusation, she said. I know, I replied. But I have a feeling I'm onto something, and I need your help to prove it. Sarah agreed to look for the invoices. We exchanged numbers, and I promised to keep her updated. As I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was stepping into something dangerous. But I also knew that I couldn't let Mr. Harrison get away with what he was doing. Not after what he said about my grandmother. When I got home, I couldn't shake the need to do some digging online. I knew this could be a long shot, but I Googled Golden Years Supplies lawsuits. Bingo. Several articles popped up detailing complaints against the company. They were accused of overbilling, supplying faulty medical equipment, and even falsifying records. The company had a reputation for preying on vulnerable patients in care facilities, charging exorbitant prices for even the simplest supplies. The lawsuits had been dismissed or settled out of court, but these accusations were enough to solidify my certainty. I had to find more evidence. I spent the rest of the night brainstorming, trying to figure out how to prove Mr. Harrison's involvement. It wasn't enough to just suspect. I had to find concrete evidence that pointed directly to him. I also wondered who else was involved. Was it just Mr. Harrison, or was there a whole ring of people involved in the scheme? I knew this was just the tip of the iceberg. I found them, she said. I found the old invoices. And there's something else. What was it? And was I ready to hear it? A hidden email reveals everything. What else did you find, Sarah? I asked, my voice trembling. The invoices, they're not right, she said. The quantities of supplies listed don't match what we actually received. We were billed for things we never used. This was exactly what I needed. Proof that Golden Year Supplies was overbilling the hospice. And if they were overbilling the hospice, they were likely overbilling others as well. Can you send me copies of those invoices? I asked. Of course, she said. But that's not the something else I wanted to tell you about. My heart skipped a beat. What is it? I remembered something from when we stopped using Golden Year Supplies, she said. There was an email exchange between the hospice administrator and someone at MedTech Solutions. It was about a special discount on supplies if we switched vendors. MedTech Solutions, my company. Harrison. Do you still have that email? I asked, my voice rising in excitement. I think so, she said. I'll have to dig through my old files, but I remember thinking it was strange at the time. Why would a medical technology company be offering discounts on hospice supplies? Sarah, you're amazing, I said. If you can find that email, it could be the key to everything. I spent the rest of the day pacing my apartment, waiting for Sarah to call. Every time the phone rang, my heart jumped. I knew this was my chance to expose Mr. Harrison and his scheme, but I also knew that it wouldn't be easy. He was a powerful man with a lot to lose. It was Sarah. I found it, she said, her voice triumphant. I found the email, and it's even worse than I thought. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The email isn't just offering a discount, she said. It's offering a kickback. A percentage of every dollar the hospice spends with Golden Year supplies will be paid back to MedTech Solutions. A kickback. That's how Mr. Harrison was profiting from my grandmother's death. He was lining his pockets by defrauding the hospice and exploiting vulnerable patients. I was furious. Who signed the email? I asked. It's signed by... Sarah paused, her voice hesitant. Mr. Harrison. I wasn't surprised, but hearing it confirmed made my blood boil. I knew I had to act fast. I had the evidence I needed to expose him. But how? Sarah, thank you, I said. You've been a lifesaver. I don't know how to repay you. Just make sure that man pays for what he did, she said. For your grandmother and for all the other patients he's exploited. I promised her I would. But I knew that exposing Mr. Harrison would be a risky move. He was a powerful man, and he wouldn't go down without a fight. As I was thinking this, I found a piece of paper with my late grandmother's calendar from last year. There it was, a name I remembered that she complained about. She's been saying the supplies are not enough. How could she know that? I had to figure out I decided to head back to the office, hoping to find more evidence. It was a risk, but I felt compelled to do it. What if he already knew I was onto him? Returning to the scene of the crime, the office was eerily quiet as I slipped inside after hours. The janitor, a friendly old man named Walter, barely glanced up from his work as I passed. I gave him a polite nod and continued towards Mr. Harrison's office. My heart pounded in my chest as I reached for the door handle. It was unlocked. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The office was just as I remembered it, cluttered, impersonal, and smelling faintly of stale coffee. The shredder sat innocently in the corner, a silent testament to Mr. Harrison's attempts to cover his tracks. I started searching, methodically going through every drawer and file cabinet. Most of the documents were mundane, sales reports, memos, employee files, but I knew there had to be more. Something that would tie Mr. Harrison directly to the kickback scheme. After what felt like hours, I found it. Hidden in a false bottom drawer beneath a stack of old invoices was a contract. It was between MedTech Solutions and Golden Year Supplies, outlining the kickback agreement in detail. It was signed by Mr. Harrison and the CEO of Golden Year Supplies. I had him. As I was examining the contract, I heard a noise behind me. I spun around to see Mr. Harrison standing in the doorway, his face contorted in anger. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, his voice dripping with menace. "I think you know," I said, holding up the contract. His eyes widened in horror as he recognized the document. He lunged towards me, trying to grab it, but I dodged him. "You can't prove anything," he snarled. "I think I just did," I said, raising the contract higher. He stared at me, his face red with fury. "You're going to regret this," he said, his voice low and threatening. I wasn't scared. I was angry that he had exploited my grandmother, angry that he had defrauded the hospice, and angry that he thought he could get away with it. "I'm not the one who's going to regret this," I said. "You are." I quickly snapped a photo of the contract with my phone before Mr. Harrison could react. He continued reaching for me, and I managed to dash out of the office, clutching the evidence and my phone tightly. As I ran through the parking lot, I could hear Mr. Harrison shouting behind me, but I didn't stop. I knew I had to get out of there and figure out I knew what I had to do, but he was clearly dangerous. Should I go to the police, or was there another way? A sister's betrayal. I needed to talk to someone I trusted, so I called my sister, Emily. She was a lawyer and always had a level head. I told her everything about the firing, Mr. Harrison's callous comment, the fake invoices, and the kickback scheme. Emily was shocked and outraged. "This is unbelievable," she said. "You need to go to the police immediately." "I know," I said, "but I'm worried about the hospice. If I go to the police, they'll launch an investigation, and the hospice could lose its funding. It would hurt the patients who rely on it." "But what about Mr. Harrison?" Emily asked. "He needs to be stopped." "I know," I said, "but I don't want to hurt innocent people in the process." Emily sighed. "This is a tough situation," she said. "Let me think about it. I'll call you back later." I wanted to expose Mr. Harrison, but I didn't want to jeopardize the hospice. It felt like an impossible choice. Later that evening, Emily called me back, but her tone was different. It was hesitant, almost apologetic. "I've been doing some research," she said, "and it turns out that MedTech Solutions is a major client of my law firm." My heart sank. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means that I can't represent you," she said. "It would be a conflict of interest." I was stunned. "You're choosing your law firm over me? Over your own sister?" "It's not that simple," she said. "If I get involved, it could jeopardize my career." "So, you're willing to let Mr. Harrison get away with what he did just to protect your career?" I asked, my voice rising in anger. "Please don't put it that way," she said. "I'm just trying to be responsible." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own sister was betraying me. Not only would she not help me, but she was siding with the people who had wronged me. "I thought you were better than this, Emily," I said, my voice shaking with disappointment. "I thought you cared about justice." "I do care about justice," she said, "but I also have to think about my future." "I don't want to talk to you anymore," I said, and hung up the phone. I was alone, betrayed by my boss and now by my own sister. It felt like the world was crashing down around me. What was I supposed to do now? My phone rang again. It was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering it. Was it Mr. Harrison? I took a deep breath and answered the phone. "Hello?" "Hello," a voice said on the other end. "Is this—" The voice seemed familiar, but I couldn't place it. "Who is this?" I asked cautiously. "My name is David Miller," the voice said. "I used to work at MedTech Solutions." Why was he calling me now? Could I trust him? An unlikely ally. "David Miller," I repeated, trying to place the name. "I don't think I know you." "I worked in the accounting department," he said. "I left a few months ago. I couldn't stomach what was going on there anymore." My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" I asked. "I know about the kickback scheme with Golden Year Supplies," he said. "I saw the documents. I tried to report it, but no one would listen to me." "Why are you calling me now?" I asked, still wary. "I heard about what happened to you," he said. "About how you were fired while you were taking care of your grandmother. I knew I had to do something." "How did you get my number?" I asked. "I have my ways," he said. "The important thing is that I want to help you." I hesitated. Could I trust this man? He was a stranger, but he seemed genuine, and he claimed to have inside knowledge of the kickback scheme. "What kind of help are you offering?" I asked. "I have copies of some of the documents," he said. "The ones that prove Mr. Harrison was involved. I can give them to you." This was exactly what I needed. More evidence to solidify my case, but I was still cautious. "Why didn't you go to the police?" I asked. "I was afraid," he said. "Mr. Harrison is a powerful man. I didn't want to put my family at risk." "But you're willing to help me?" I asked. "Yes," he said, "because what Mr. Harrison did was wrong, and someone needs to stop him." I thought for a moment. This could be a trap, but I had a feeling that David was telling the truth, and I desperately needed his help. "Okay," I said, "I'll meet you, but I want to meet in a public place, and I want to see the documents before I trust you." We agreed to meet at a local coffee shop. I hung up the phone, my mind racing. Was this a turning point, or was I walking into a trap? I scanned the crowd, looking for David. I didn't know what he looked like. He was middle-aged, with kind eyes and a nervous demeanor. "Are you?" he asked, his voice hesitant. "Yes," I said. "Are you David?" He nodded. He pulled out a manila envelope from his briefcase and handed it to me. I opened the envelope and examined the contents. It was exactly what he had promised. Copies of emails, contracts, and bank statements that proved Mr. Harrison's involvement in the kickback scheme. I looked up at David, my eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," I said. "You have no idea how much this means to me." "Just make sure he pays for what he did," David said. "For your grandmother and for all the other people he's hurt." I nodded. I knew exactly what I had to do. The tables turned with the evidence I now had. I went straight to the Birmingham Police Department and filed a report. Detective Miller, a weary but dedicated officer, listened intently as I recounted my story, laying out the evidence David had provided. He was skeptical at first, but as he examined the documents, his expression changed. He saw the signatures, the bank transfers, the irrefutable proof of Mr. Harrison's fraudulent scheme. "This is serious," he said, his voice grim. "We'll need to launch a full investigation." I felt a surge of relief. Harrison was going to face the consequences of his actions. Detective Miller assured me that the investigation would be thorough and swift. He warned me that Mr. Harrison might try to retaliate, and he advised me to stay safe. I cooperated fully with the police, providing them with every piece of information I had. Then, one morning, I got the call I had been waiting for. Detective Miller informed me that Mr. Harrison had been arrested. I felt a wave of satisfaction wash over me. He couldn't hurt anyone again. The wheels of justice were turning, albeit slowly. I later learned that the police had raided Mr. Harrison's office and his home. They found even more evidence of the kickback scheme, as well as evidence of other fraudulent activities. It turned out that he had been embezzling money from the company for years. The news of Mr. Harrison's arrest spread like wildfire through MedTech Solutions. The employees were shocked and disgusted. Many of them had suspected that something was wrong, but they had been too afraid to speak out. The company's board of directors launched an internal investigation and vowed to cooperate fully with the authorities. They promised to make amends for Mr. Harrison's actions and to implement stricter oversight measures to prevent future fraud. As for me, I received a formal apology from the company. They offered me my job back, with a promotion and a substantial raise. It was tempting, but I turned them down. I realized that I couldn't work for a company that had allowed such a corrupt individual to rise to power. I wanted to do something meaningful, something that would make a difference in the world. What happened? I volunteered at a local elder care advocacy group, assisting families in navigating the complex world of hospice care and long-term care facilities. I also started speaking out about the dangers of elder abuse and financial exploitation. I shared my story at community events, conferences, and even on local news programs. My activism brought me a sense of purpose and fulfillment that I had never experienced before. I realized that my grandmother's death had not been in vain. It had inspired me to fight for justice and to protect the vulnerable. And what about my sister, Emily? After Mr. Harrison's arrest, she called me, her voice filled with remorse. She apologized for not supporting me and for putting her career ahead of our family. I was still hurt, but I forgave her. I understood that she had been in a difficult position, and I knew that she was genuinely sorry for her actions. We slowly rebuilt our relationship, and we are now closer than ever. She even started volunteering with me at the elder care advocacy group. As for David Miller, the unlikely ally who had helped me expose Mr. Harrison, we remained in contact. He became a close friend and confidant. He told me that he had always regretted not speaking out sooner, and he was grateful for the opportunity to make amends. I often think about Mr. He was sentenced to several years in prison and ordered to pay restitution to the victims of his fraud. He lost his job, his reputation, and his freedom. While I was tempted to feel satisfaction, I didn't. I realized that his punishment wouldn't bring my grandmother back. It wouldn't undo the pain and suffering he had caused. Instead, I focused on the positive changes that had come about. I had exposed a corrupt individual, protected vulnerable patients, and inspired others to fight for justice. I also learned a valuable lesson, that even in the darkest of times, hope can prevail, that even when you feel betrayed and alone, you can find the strength to overcome adversity. My grandmother would be proud. It was a difficult and painful experience, but it ultimately made me a stronger and more resilient person. I learned that you can't always trust the people you think you can, and that sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even when it's scary. If you're ever in a similar situation, don't be afraid to speak out. Don't be afraid to stand up for yourself and for the people you love. And remember that even when things seem hopeless, there is always hope. And I found a way to help others avoid all of this and ensure that there is no neglect of our elders. I've started my own company, one that makes sure the supply lines are honest and the people are cared for. In the end, what Mr. Harrison said about old people die anyway was right. But it doesn't give anyone the right to treat their lives as less valuable. The life lessons my grandmother taught me will continue to guide me, even to this day. And that man's callous remarks inadvertently pushed me into the best version of myself. I hope my story has inspired you. I know that I feel at peace now, knowing that I turned this injustice into a way to protect others. What would you have done in my place? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Thanks for watching. Detective Miller suggested a wire. It seemed like something out of a movie. He said it would help gather more concrete evidence against others involved at MedTech, those higher up who may have known about Harrison's actions and looked the other way. He knew Harrison wouldn't roll over easily and would protect others, so wearing a wire might be the only way to get to the full truth. Could I do it? Could I really face that man again, knowing what he was capable of? The thought sent shivers down my spine. It was risky, incredibly so. If Harrison suspected anything, if he even caught a glimpse of the wire, I would be in serious danger. But I kept thinking about Grandma, about how helpless she was at the end, and how Harrison had so callously dismissed her life. I looked at Detective Miller, his face etched with concern. He wasn't pushing me, but I knew he believed this was the right thing to do. Okay, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I'll do it. The back. Detective Miller and his team meticulously fitted me with the wire, explaining how it worked, how to behave, what to say. They drilled me on potential scenarios, preparing me for every possible outcome. I had to act normal, as though nothing had changed, as though I wasn't wearing a recording device, secretly gathering evidence that could send a man to prison. I rehearsed the conversation over and over again, trying to anticipate Harrison's responses, crafting my own questions to elicit the information we needed. It was like preparing for a play, except the stakes were much, much higher. What if I messed up? What if I froze? What if Harrison saw through my charade? It was all consuming. I was instructed to call Harrison and act as though I wanted to meet and discuss this. The police knew it was a risk that he wouldn't agree, but if he did, they'd be ready to record and protect me if things got out of hand. The sound of his voice sent a jolt of fear through me. He sounded surprised, almost relieved to hear from me. He agreed to meet me at a quiet restaurant near his office. I could feel the eyes of the police officers nearby, watching every move. As I sat across from Harrison, the hidden wire felt like a weight on my chest. He started talking about the charges, trying to paint himself as a victim. I took a deep breath and asked, "Who else knew about this?" He stiffened. "Knew about what?" he asked, his eyes narrowing. "The kickbacks, the overbilling, the embezzlement," I said, my voice steady. He glared at me. The tension in the air was palpable. I continued pushing. "I just want to understand how this happened," I lied. "If you can give me the names of the others involved, I won't press charges, I promise." It was a bluff, but it seemed to work. Harrison paused, considering his options. He realized this was not something that could be swept under the rug, and he was in deep trouble. What did he say? Did I even want to know the answer? His voice was low and guarded, betraying his anxiety. How could I ever trust anyone again? It wasn't just me, Harrison. The CEO knew. He signed off on everything. He needed the numbers to look good for the shareholders. The CEO, I should have known. That man always gave me the creeps. He was all smiles and handshakes, but there was a coldness in his eyes that always made me uneasy. And who else? I pressed, my heart pounding. The CFO, Harrison said. She handled the finances, made sure the money went where it needed to go. The CFO. She was a shark, ruthless and ambitious. She'd stop at nothing to climb the corporate ladder. I thought it was a great work ethic. Anyone else? I asked. That's it, Harrison said, his eyes darting around the room. Just the three of us. I wasn't sure if I believed him. I had a feeling there were others involved. People who had turned a blind eye to the fraud, who had benefited from the scheme. I continued questioning Harrison, trying to get him to reveal more details, but he clammed up. He realized he'd already said too much. He started to get nervous, his eyes constantly scanning the restaurant. I think I should go, he said, standing up abruptly. I don't want to talk about this anymore. I knew this was my chance. If I let him leave, I might never get another opportunity to gather evidence against him. I stood up as well, blocking his path. Please, just a few more questions, I pleaded. I need to understand why you did this. He glared at me, his face contorted in anger. I did it for the money, he said, for the power, for the respect. He pushed past me and stormed out of the restaurant. I watched him go, my heart sinking. I had gotten some valuable information, but I knew it wasn't enough. We needed more evidence to bring down the CEO and the CFO. I met with Detective Miller, relaying everything that Harrison had said. He was pleased with the progress, but agreed that we needed to gather more information to build a case. I decided to confront the CEO directly. I had nothing to lose. I knew it was a long shot, but maybe, just maybe, I could rattle him enough to confess. The CEO's office was opulent, a monument to his success. He sat behind a large mahogany desk, his expression unreadable. What do you want? He asked, his voice cold and imperious. I know about the kickbacks, I said, my voice steady. I know about the fraud. I know about everything. He didn't flinch. You have no proof, he said, his eyes narrowing. I have enough, I said, and I'm not afraid to go to the authorities. He leaned back in his chair, a slight smile playing on his lips. You wouldn't dare, he said. You have too much to lose. What do you mean? I asked, confused. Think about your family, he said, his voice low and threatening. Think about their safety. My blood ran cold. He was threatening my family. I couldn't believe he would stoop so low. He had gone too far. My hands clenched. Did he know something? My mind raced.